I wasn't supposed to see it. That's what I kept telling myself, as I stood frozen in the service hallway of Carmine's, the kind of upscale Italian restaurant, where the wine list had more pages than most novels, and the clientele wore watches that cost more than my annual salary. My hands trembled around the tray of dirty plates I'd been carrying, the porcelain rattling like my pulse. Through the narrow gap in the velvet curtain that separated the private dining rooms from the main floor, I watched her, the woman in the crimson dress who'd arrived on the arm of the most dangerous man I'd ever laid eyes on. She was beautiful in that effortless way that came from money and good genes, sleek dark hair, flawless olive skin, diamonds at her throat that caught the candlelight like trapped stars. She was also currently pressed against the wall of the coat check room, her manicured hands tangled in another man's hair, her mouth hungry and desperate against his. Not the man she'd arrived with. The plates shifted on my tray. I steadied them, but my breath had gone shallow. I should have walked away, should have pretended I'd seen nothing, delivered my dirty dishes to the kitchen, and collected my tips at the end of the night like always. But I couldn't move, because I'd seen his face when they'd arrived, the man she'd come with. Dark eyes that seemed to catalog everything in a single glance. A jaw carved from something harder than marble, the kind of presence that made the entire restaurant go quiet for just a heartbeat when he walked in. Like everyone's survival instincts had kicked in at once. Dante Marcello. I didn't know much about Boston's underworld. I was a graduate student working doubles to pay off loans. Not some crime documentary enthusiast, but even I knew that name. It appeared in newspaper headlines with words like "alleged" and "under investigation" attached to it. The kind of man who owned half the city through businesses that were probably fronts for things I didn't want to imagine. And his girlfriend was cheating on him 10 feet away from where he sat, likely discussing things that would make my blood run cold. The woman I'd heard him call her Isabella pulled back from her lover with a breathy laugh. She adjusted her dress, checked her reflection in the small mirror by the coat hooks, and pressed one finger to her swollen lips. The man she'd been kissing, younger, expensive suit, nervous energy, whispered something that made her smile. "Tuesday," she murmured back. "The usual place." Then she swept out of the coat check room like she'd simply been powdering her nose. I stumbled backward, my shoulder hitting the wall. The plates clattered loudly enough that I flinched, waiting for someone to appear and demand to know what I was doing lurking in the shadows. No one came. I forced my legs to move, carrying the tray toward the kitchen with mechanical precision. My shift manager, Tony, barely glanced at me as I loaded the dirty dishes into the industrial washer. The familiar sounds of the kitchen sizzling pans, rapid-fire Italian from the line cooks, the constant percussion of knife on cutting board should have grounded me. Instead, all I could think about was the way Dante Marcello's hand had rested on the small of Isabella's back when they'd walked in. Possessive, protective, the kind of touch that said mine. "Table 12 needs their check," Tony called out, snapping me back to reality. I nodded, wiping my damp palms on my black apron. Table 12. That was them. The private dining room where Dante Marcello sat with 3 other men, all of them wearing the same aura of controlled violence like a second skin. My hands shook as I printed the check. I could just leave it on the table, smile politely, walk away. But my feet carried me toward that velvet curtain, and I knew somewhere deep in my gut where instinct lived that this was a mistake, that whatever happened next would change something fundamental in my carefully constructed, ordinary life. The private dining room smelled like expensive cologne and cigar smoke. Dante sat at the head of the table, his dark suit jacket draped over the back of his chair, white shirt sleeves rolled to his elbows. A tumbler of amber liquid sat untouched at his elbow. He was listening to one of the other men speak, his expression unreadable except for the slight tension in his jaw. Isabella had returned to her seat beside him, one hand resting delicately on his arm. I approached with the check. My heart beat so loud in my ears, I was certain everyone could hear it. "Your check, Mr. Marcello?" I managed, my voice steadier than I felt. His eyes lifted to mine, dark, assessing. The kind of gaze that felt like it could peel back layers and see things you'd tried to keep hidden. For a moment, the entire room went still. "Thank you," he said, his voice low and smooth, with an edge that suggested violence was always just a breath away. I should have left then, should have turned and walked away. Instead, I heard myself say, "Sir, may I speak with you privately?" The words tumbled out before I could stop them, before logic could override whatever insane impulse had seized control of my mouth. The other men at the table went quiet. Isabella's perfectly shaped eyebrows rose, and Dante Marcello tilted his head slightly, studying me like I was a puzzle he hadn't expected to encounter. Privately, he repeated, almost amused. Yes. My voice came out as barely a whisper. It's important. He set down his pen with deliberate slowness. Stood. The movement was fluid, controlled, predatory. Excuse me, gentlemen. Isabella. He gestured toward the door. After you, miss? Lily, I breathed. Lily Chen. As I walked past him into the dimly lit corridor, I felt his presence like heat at my back, and I knew, with absolute certainty, that I'd just stepped into something I couldn't take back. The corridor felt smaller with him in it. Dante Marcello closed the door to the private dining room with a soft click that sounded like a gunshot in the silence. The muted sounds of the restaurant clinking glasses, low conversations, the occasional burst of laughter seemed to belong to another world entirely. Here, in this narrow hallway lined with vintage photographs of old Boston, there was only him and me, and the choice I'd just made. A choice I was already regretting. You have 30 seconds, he said, leaning one shoulder against the wall. His posture was deceptively casual, but his eyes were alert. Waiting. Make them count. My mouth had gone dry. Up close, he was even more intimidating than I'd imagined. Tall enough that I had to tilt my chin up to meet his gaze. The kind of physical presence that made the air feel thinner. A small scar cut through his left eyebrow, the only imperfection in an otherwise ruthlessly handsome face. The words stuck in my throat. What was I doing? What did I think would happen? That he'd thank me for the information and send me on my way with a generous tip? 20 seconds. His voice held no impatience, just cold certainty. This was a man accustomed to being obeyed, to having his time valued above all else. I forced myself to breathe. Your girlfriend. Isabella. Something flickered in his expression too quick to read. What about her? She's cheating on you. The words came out in a rush, tumbling over each other. I saw her, just now, in the coat check room with another man. They kissed. She told him Tuesday, the usual place. Silence. It stretched between us like a living thing, heavy and dangerous. Dante Marcello didn't move, didn't blink, just watched me with those dark eyes that revealed nothing. I'd expected anger, rage, some kind of volcanic reaction. Instead, he asked, "Why are you telling me this?" The question caught me off guard. Because you should know. Because it's not right. Not right, he repeated. And there was something almost curious in his tone now. He pushed off the wall, taking a single step closer. I fought the urge to retreat. You risk confronting a man you don't know, about a woman you've never met, because of some sense of moral obligation. Yes. It sounded stupid when he put it like that. Naive. Wouldn't you want to know? Want. He said the word like he was tasting it, testing its weight. Interesting choice. Another step. Close enough now that I could smell his cologne, something dark and expensive, cedar and smoke. Close enough to see the precise way his tie was knotted, the glint of silver cufflinks at his wrists. Tell me something, Lily Chen. My name in his mouth sent an involuntary shiver down my spine. Do you make a habit of involving yourself in situations that don't concern you? No. My voice came out steadier than I felt. Never. Then why now? Because I saw the way you looked at her, I almost said. Because for just a moment, when you walked in with her, on your arm, I saw something in your face that looked almost like happiness. Because even monsters deserve the truth. But I couldn't say any of that. I don't know, I admitted instead. Maybe I'm just stupid. The corner of his mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, but close. Maybe. He studied me for another long moment, and I felt stripped bare under that gaze, like he was cataloging everything: the cheap silver necklace my mother had given me for graduation, the way I'd chewed my bottom lip raw, the faint coffee stain on my apron I'd tried to scrub out during my break. What do you study? He asked suddenly. The shift in topic threw me. What? Your hands, he gestured vaguely. No calluses. Clean nails despite the work. You're a student. What do you study? Psychology. I heard myself answer. Clinical psychology. I'm in my second year of Why Does That Matter? It doesn't. But his eyes said otherwise. How long have you worked here? 6 months. Do you like it? It pays. My loans. I was getting frustrated now, the adrenaline starting to ebb and leave confusion in its wake. Mr. Marcello, I told you what I saw. What you do with that information is your business. I should get back to work. I moved to step around him. but his hand caught my wrist. Not hard, his grip was surprisingly gentle but firm enough to stop me. You saw her with someone. Did you see his face? My pulse hammered where his fingers touched my skin. Yes. Would you recognize him again? The question sent ice through my veins. Because suddenly this wasn't just about infidelity anymore. This was about something darker, something that made the back of my neck prickle with warning. Yes, I think so. He released my wrist, but the warmth of his touch lingered. Then you've made yourself useful, Lily Chen. Before I could process what that meant, the door to the private dining room opened. Isabella appeared, her expression pleasant but puzzled. Dante? Is everything all right? Her eyes slid to me, dismissive. Just the waitress. Nothing important. Dante's face transformed. The intensity that had been focused on me vanished, replaced by smooth charm. Everything's fine, Kara. Just handling a small matter. Go back inside. I'll be there in a moment. She hesitated, then smiled and pressed a kiss to his cheek. Her lipstick left a mark. Don't be long. Marco was just about to tell that story about the shipping mishap. As she disappeared back into the room, Dante turned to me one last time. You work tomorrow night? Yes. Good. He pulled out his wallet, extracted several $100 bills, and pressed them into my hand. For your discretion. And your time. Then he leaned in, his breath warm against my ear. Go home after your shift. Don't linger. Don't take any detours. Do you understand? I nodded, unable to form words. Good girl. He was gone before I could ask what I'd just gotten myself into. But standing alone in that corridor, his money burning in my palm and his cologne still in my lungs, I already knew the answer. Everything. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I lay in my cramped studio apartment, staring at the water-stained ceiling while rain battered against the single window. The $100 bills sat on my nightstand, crisp and accusatory. Blood money, some voice in my head whispered. Though technically, I supposed, silence money. Go home after your shift. Don't linger, don't take any detours. The warning played on repeat in my mind, his voice as clear as if he were still standing beside me. I'd obeyed, of course, taken the T straight home, walked the 3 blocks to my building, with my keys laced between my fingers like makeshift claws, and triple-checked the locks on my door. But obedience didn't stop the questions. What had I witnessed, really? Just an affair? Or had I stumbled into something larger, something with teeth? The way Dante had asked about the man's face, the careful control in his expression when Isabella returned, it all pointed to complications I couldn't begin to understand. At 3 a.m., I finally gave up on sleep and made chamomile tea I didn't drink. My psychology textbook lay open on the kitchen table, untouched. I had an exam on Friday covering attachment theory and trauma responses, but the words blurred together meaninglessly. Instead, I found myself Googling his name. Dante Marcello, 34, alleged head of the Marcello crime family. Federal investigation into money laundering, connections to union, corruption, illegal gambling operations. No convictions, charges dropped due to lack of evidence. The photos showed him at charity galas, in expensive suits, shaking hands with politicians and businessmen. He looked different in the pictures, more polished, more distant, not like the man who'd stood close enough in that corridor for me to count his heartbeats. What have you done, Lily? The next evening, I arrived at Carmine's with my stomach in knots. Tony assigned me to the main floor, far from the private dining rooms. Relief and disappointment warred in my chest. Maybe Dante wouldn't even be here tonight. Maybe last night had been a singular moment of insanity that I could forget, file away, pretend never happened. But halfway through my shift, I felt that prickle of awareness that made the hair on my arms stand up. I turned, and there he was. Not in the private rooms, not surrounded by dangerous men in expensive suits. He sat alone at a corner table, a book open beside an untouched plate of linguine. The dim lighting cast shadows across his face, softening the hard edges, making him look almost normal. Almost like someone I might have met in a coffee shop or a library, instead of in the heart of Boston's criminal underworld. Our eyes met across the restaurant. He lifted 2 fingers in a small gesture. Come here. My feet moved before my brain could object. I wove between tables, past couples celebrating anniversaries and business, associates closing deals, until I stood beside him. You came back, he said, closing the book. I glimpsed the title, The Count of Monte Cristo. Something about that detail, This dangerous man reading classic literature alone in a crowded restaurant made him suddenly, terrifyingly human. "I work here," I replied, aiming for steady. Did you want to order something else?" "No." He gestured to the empty chair across from him. "Sit. I'm working." "Sit, Lily." It wasn't loud, wasn't aggressive, but something in his tone made my knees bend, my body obeying before my mind could protest. I perched on the edge of the chair, hyper-aware of the other diners, of Tony watching from near the bar. "You're wondering why I'm here?" Dante said. "Among other things." His mouth curved, not quite a smile, but close. "You looked me up." It wasn't a question. Heat flooded my cheeks. "How did you have that look? The one people get when they've read things online and are trying to reconcile the words with the person in front of them." He leaned back, studying me with that unsettling intensity. "What did you learn? That you're dangerous. True. That people around you tend to disappear or meet unfortunate accidents. Also true, though rarely proven." My heart hammered. "Should I be afraid of you?" He considered this, fingers tracing the rim of his wine glass. "Probably. But you're not, are you?" He was right, and that scared me more than anything else. I should be terrified, should be looking for exits, planning escape routes. Instead, I felt pulled forward, like a moth to flame, too fascinated to flee. "Isabella," I said, changing the subject. What happened?" I ended it. 3 simple words, delivered without emotion. "This afternoon, she's no longer my concern." "Because of what I told you?" "Because of many things. You simply confirmed what I already suspected." He paused, then pulled something from his pocket, a small velvet box. He set it, on the table between us. "I was going to propose, Saturday. Private yacht, champagne, the works." The box sat there, a tiny monument to plans unmade. I didn't touch it. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "Don't be." His eyes found mine, and for the first time I saw something raw beneath the control. Anger, yes, but also betrayal. Pain, the human cost of being lied to by someone you'd trusted. She made her choice, as did the man she was with. The way he said it cold, final sent ice down my spine. "What did you do?" "Nothing yet." He closed the velvet box with a soft click, pocketed it. "But I will, when the time is right. Dante, I need to ask you something." He leaned forward, and suddenly the space between us felt intimate despite the crowded restaurant. "The man you saw her with. I'm going to show you some photographs. I need you to identify him." "Why?" "Because he's not just her lover." Dante's voice dropped lower. "Dangerous. He's someone who's been stealing from me. And I need to know exactly who in my organization I can't trust." Before I could respond, he slid his phone across the table. On the screen, 3 faces. 3 men in suits, all similar enough that they could have been brothers. My finger hovered over the screen. Then I pointed to the one in the middle. Him. Dante's expression didn't change, but something in his posture shifted, settled. "You're certain?" "Yes." He took the phone back, his jaw tight. "His name is Marco Vitale. He's been my accountant for 5 years. He's also Isabella's cousin." The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. Family, business, betrayal on multiple levels. "What will you do to him?" I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know. Dante stood, buttoning his jacket. Then he looked down at me with eyes that held winter. "You're my new date Saturday," he said. "The yacht. 8 p.m. Wear something black." "What?" But he was already walking away, leaving me at his table with cold pasta and 1,000 questions I didn't dare ask aloud. I told myself I wouldn't go. For 3 days, I rehearsed the conversation in my mind. "I'm sorry, Mr. Marcello, but I can't. This isn't my world. I'm just a waitress, a student. I don't belong on yachts with men like you. Reasonable, rational, safe." But Wednesday night, a garment bag appeared at my apartment door. No note. No explanation. Just black fabric that whispered like sin when I unzipped it, a dress that probably cost more than my entire semester's tuition. Silk that caught light like oil on water, with a neckline that would bare my collarbones and a back that plunged lower than anything I'd ever worn. I hung it in my closet and tried to ignore it. Thursday, my psychology professor returned our midterms. I'd gotten a B-, my lowest grade all semester. She'd written in red ink, "Your analysis lacks focus. Are you all right?" I wasn't. But I couldn't exactly explain that I'd accidentally entangled myself with a mafia boss and was now expected to attend some kind of revenge date on a yacht, while a man's life possibly hung in the balance. Friday evening, as I was leaving campus, a black car pulled up beside me. Not a regular car. A Mercedes with windows tinted so dark they looked like portals to nothing. My stomach dropped as the rear window lowered. Dante sat in the back seat, tablet in hand, looking every inch the businessman. Except businessmen didn't usually have drivers who wore shoulder holsters visible beneath their jackets. "Get in," he said. "I have plans. Cancel them." Students streamed past us on the sidewalk, oblivious. The normalcy of the moment, the street vendor selling pretzels, the couple arguing about dinner plans, the dog walker with 4 leashes tangled made the car feel like a tear in reality. I got in. The door closed with a sound like a vault ceiling. The interior smelled like leather and his cologne. The driver pulled smoothly into traffic, and I realized I hadn't even asked where we were. "Going. Tomorrow night," Dante said, not looking up from his tablet. "There are things you need to know." "I can't go. This isn't, Marco Vitale will be there." Now he did look at me, and his gaze was sharp. Isabella too, and several other people who've been taking what's mine. "So this is about business. Revenge. It's about sending a message." He set down the tablet. "When someone betrays me, there are consequences. But those consequences need to be witnessed. Understood. That's how this world works." "Then why do you need me?" The car turned down a street I didn't recognize, away from my neighborhood. Panic fluttered in my chest, but Dante's expression remained calm, almost gentle. "Because you're honest," he said simply. "In a world full of liars and sycophants, you told me a truth that cost you nothing and could have cost you everything. That's rare. That's valuable." "I'm not valuable. I'm just what? A waitress?" His voice hardened. "A student with loans? Someone unimportant?" The words hit harder than I expected. Because yes, that's exactly what I'd been about to say. "People like Marco," Dante continued. "They think they're clever. They think they can steal, lie, cheat, and walk away clean because they've hidden behind the right relationships, behind family, behind carefully constructed alibis." He leaned forward slightly. "But then there's you, an outsider who saw the truth in 30 seconds and had the spine to speak it. I shouldn't have. You should have." His hand moved, fast enough to startle me, and suddenly his fingers were under my chin, tilting my face up. "Stop apologizing for having integrity. It's the rarest quality I've encountered in years." His touch was warm, firm but not cruel. I could feel my pulse jumping against his thumb. "Tomorrow night," he said quietly, "you'll be on my arm. You'll smile, you'll drink champagne, and you'll watch while I dismantle everything Marco built. Not with violence, that's too easy. With truth, with evidence, with humiliation. And Isabella?" Something dark crossed his face. "She'll watch too. She'll understand what it costs to betray a Marcello." The car stopped. I glanced out the window and realized we were outside my apartment building. The driver hadn't needed directions. "He knows where you live." The thought should have terrified me. Instead, it felt almost protective, like being circled by something dangerous that had decided not to bite. 8 p.m., Dante said, releasing my chin. "The Marina Bay dock. Pier 7. Don't be late." "What if I don't come?" He smiled, then a real smile that transformed his entire face, made him look younger, almost boyish. It was somehow more frightening than his anger. "You will." I opened the car door, but his voice stopped me. "Lily." I turned back. "The dress fits you," he said. "I made sure of it." Heat flooded my face. "How did you—" "I pay attention." His eyes traced over me. Not lecherously, but cataloging. The way a sculptor might study marble. "Size 4, 5'5". You favor your left foot, slightly old injury, maybe ankle. You bite your lip when you're nervous and your tells are in your hands." I was trembling and I couldn't stop. "You had no right." "I had every right the moment you involved yourself in my life." He leaned back, already dismissing me. "Tomorrow, Lily. Don't make me come find you." The door closed. The Mercedes pulled away. I stood on the sidewalk as rain began to fall, watching the taillights disappear into Boston's evening traffic. In my apartment, I pulled out my phone with shaking hands. I should call someone. My roommate from undergrad, my mother, the police. Instead, I found myself staring at the garment bag hanging in my closet. At midnight, I tried the dress on. It fit perfectly, and I knew standing there in my tiny bathroom, looking at a reflection I barely recognized that I was going to go. Not because he'd ordered me to, but because some reckless part of me needed to see what happened next, even if it destroyed me. Saturday arrived with brutal sunshine that made the ocean glitter like broken glass. I spent the afternoon in a fog of anxiety, trying on the dress 3 more times, taking it off, swearing I wouldn't go, then putting it back on. By 7 p.m., my hands were shaking so badly I could barely manage my makeup. The girl in the mirror looked like someone else. Someone sophisticated and dangerous, with dark lipstick and hair I'd actually bothered to style. The dress transformed my body into something elegant, all clean lines and exposed skin that felt both empowering and vulnerable. You can still back out. But my feet carried me to the T station anyway, carried me to Marina Bay, carried me down Pier 7 where yachts bobbed gently in their slips, each one more obscenely expensive than the last. The Persephone sat at the end, sleek white hull, 3 stories of tinted windows, the kind of vessel that probably had a crew of 20. Men in dark suits stood at the gangway, checking a list. I almost turned around. Then I saw him. Dante stood on the deck, one hand in his pocket, the other holding a phone to his ear. He wore all black slacks, dress shirt, no tie. The wind caught his hair, and for a moment he looked almost relaxed. Almost normal. Until his eyes found mine. He ended the call without saying goodbye. Descended the gangway with predatory grace. Stopped in front of me while I tried to remember how to breathe. "You came," he said softly. "You knew I would. I hoped." His gaze traveled over me, slower this time. Appreciative. When his eyes met mine again, there was heat in them that made my skin flush. "You're beautiful." No one had ever said it like that, like a simple fact rather than a compliment. Like he was noting the color of the sky. "I feel ridiculous," I admitted. "You look like you belong here." He offered his arm. "Come, it's time." The yacht's interior was even, more opulent than I'd imagined. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, furniture that probably cost more than my student loans. Soft music played from hidden speakers. Waiters circulated with champagne. And everywhere, people stared. At him, at me, at us together. I recognized some faces from the restaurant men, with hard eyes and expensive watches, women dripping in jewelry. They all seemed to be performing the same calculation. Who is she? Why is she here? Then I saw Isabella. She stood near the windows in a white dress that clung to every curve, her dark hair swept up, diamonds at her throat. But her face had gone pale when she spotted us. Beside her, looking equally stricken, stood Marco Vitale. "Breathe," Dante murmured against my ear. His hand settled on the small of my bare back, warm and steady. "Just stay close to me." A waiter appeared with champagne. Dante took 2 glasses, pressed one into my hand. His fingers brushed mine, lingering. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, his voice carrying across the room without being loud. "Thank you for joining me this evening." The conversations died. Everyone turned. "Some of you may have heard that Isabella and I are no longer together." His tone was conversational, almost friendly. "It's true. Relationships end. These things happen." Isabella's composure cracked slightly. Marco shifted his weight. "But tonight isn't about endings," Dante continued. "It's about beginnings. About trust. About understanding who stands with you and who stands against you." He turned to me, and the intensity in his gaze made my heart stutter. "This is Lily Chen, and she has something that's become incredibly rare in my life." He raised his glass. Honesty. The silence that followed was suffocating. Then Dante smiled, that dangerous smile that didn't reach his eyes, and addressed the room again. "Marco, why don't you join us? We have much to discuss." I watched Marco's face drain of color, watched Isabella's hand flutter to her throat, watched the other guests exchange glances, sensing blood in the water. "Dante," Marco started, his voice cracking. "I don't know what, don't lie." The words were soft but absolute. "Not now. You've done enough of that." 2 of Dante's men materialized from somewhere, flanking Marco, not touching him but close. A clear message. My champagne glass trembled in my hand. This was it, the moment I'd been brought here to witness. The dismantling he'd promised. "For 5 years," Dante said, his voice still eerily calm. "You've been stealing from me. Small amounts, clever accounting, money moved through shell companies, laundered through legitimate businesses. You thought I wouldn't notice." That's not $16 million. Dante let the number hang in the air, give or take. The forensic accountants are still calculating the exact figure. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Isabella had gone white as her dress. And my favorite part, Dante continued, is that you used my own girlfriend to do it. Had her signing documents, making transfers, all while you were fucking her in hotel rooms I paid for. Isabella's hand flew to her mouth. Tears spilled down her cheeks, ruining her perfect makeup. Dante, please, she whispered. It wasn't like that, wasn't it? He turned to her, and for the first time I saw real fury beneath the control. Tell me, Kara, when did it start? Before or after I put that 10-carat diamond on your finger? Silence. Then Marco moved fast, desperate, lunging toward the exit. He made it 3 steps before Dante's men had him on the ground, arm wrenched behind his back. The sound of bone cracking echoed through the room. Marco screamed. I flinched, champagne sloshing over my hand. Dante's arm came around my waist, pulling me against his side. Protective, possessive. Everyone here, Dante announced, his voice cutting through Marco's sobs, is a witness. This is what happens when you steal from me. When you lie to me. When you lie to me, betray me. He looked down at Marco, expression cold as winter. Take him to the lower deck. Let him think about his choices. As they dragged Marco away, Dante turned to Isabella. You have 5 minutes to leave my yacht. After that, you're trespassing. She fled, stumbling in her heels. The party resumed stiffly at first, then with growing energy. People began talking in hushed voices, casting glances our way. And I stood there, still tucked against Dante's side, realizing with crystalline clarity that I'd just become complicit. That by being here, by standing beside him, I'd chosen a side, his side. I want to leave, I whispered. Dante's hand tightened on my waist. Not yet. I can't, this is too much. Yes, you can. He turned me to face him, both hands framing my face now. His thumbs traced my cheekbones. Look at me, Lily. I did. You're stronger than you think, he said quietly. And I need you to trust me. Why? Because this isn't over yet. The yacht began moving. I felt it first as a subtle shift beneath my feet, then the shoreline pulling away through the windows. Panic spiked through my champagne haze. We're leaving the dock, I said, pulling away from Dante. You said you didn't say we'd be going anywhere. It's fine. His hand caught mine, fingers threading through. We're just going out into the harbor. An hour, maybe 2. I want off. Now. Lily. No. My voice came out louder than intended. Several guests turned to look. I lowered it to a fierce whisper. I didn't sign up for this. For being trapped on a boat while I what? His eyes searched mine. While I deal with the man who stole from me. While I protect what's mine. I'm not yours. Aren't you? He stepped closer, voice dropping. You put on the dress. You came to the dock. You stood beside me while I exposed Marco's betrayal. Every choice you've made since Tuesday night has led you here. He was right, and I hated that he was right. I need air, I managed. Come. He led me through the crowd, past curious stares and whispered conversations, to a staircase that spiraled upward. The second deck was quieter, fewer people, more shadows. Then the third deck. And suddenly we were outside on a private observation area. The wind hit me immediately, cool and salt-sharp. Boston's skyline receded behind us, lights beginning to flicker on as dusk deepened. The ocean stretched endless and dark. I gripped the railing, trying to steady my breathing. I broke his arm, I said. Because of me, you broke Marco's arm. No. Dante stood beside me, close enough that our shoulders nearly touched. I broke his arm because he stole $16 million and thought he'd get away with it. You simply helped me identify him faster. It's not the same thing. It's exactly the same thing. He turned to face me fully. Lily, look at me. I did, reluctantly. You didn't make Marco steal. You didn't make Isabella cheat. You didn't create the situation, you only revealed it. His hand lifted, tucking a strand of wind-blown hair behind my ear. The gesture was so gentle it made my chest ache. Stop carrying guilt that isn't yours. How do you do it? The question came out raw. How do you live like this? Hurting people, making decisions that destroy lives, Because the alternative is letting them destroy mine. His jaw tightened. In my world, mercy is seen as weakness. Hesitation gets you killed. Trust the wrong person and you end up like my father, shot in the back by his own brother during a family dinner. I hadn't known that. Hadn't read it in any of the articles. How old were you? 16. He said it matter-of-factly, like mentioning the weather. I watched him bleed out on my mother's Persian rug while my uncle explained that business was business. Nothing personal. My hand moved without thinking, covering his on the railing. He looked down at our joined hands, something unreadable crossing his face. Did you kill him? I asked quietly. Your uncle? Eventually. No emotion. No regret. 3 years later, when I had enough support, I made it look like a heart attack. My mother never knew the truth. We stood there in silence, the yacht cutting through dark water, and I realized I was seeing something he rarely showed anyone. The cost beneath the control, the scars under the expensive suit. You should be afraid of me, he said after a moment. I know, but you're not. I should be, I agreed. But I'm not. His thumb traced circles on the back of my hand. Why? Because you read Dumas alone in restaurants. Because you notice when waitresses have old ankle injuries. Because when you look at me, I feel seen in a way that terrifies me more than your violence ever could. But I couldn't say any of that. I don't know, I whispered instead. Dante turned fully toward me then, his free hand coming up to cut my face. You're dangerous, he said softly. More dangerous than Marco. More dangerous than Isabella. Do you know why? I shook my head, not trusting my voice. Because you make me want things I can't have. His thumb brushed my lower lip. Things that don't exist in my world. Honesty, softness. Someone who looks at me and doesn't see a monster first. I do see the monster, I admitted. But I see the man too. Something in his expression cracked. For just a heartbeat, I saw raw vulnerability, the kind that comes from years of being lied to, used, betrayed. Then his mouth was on mine. The kiss was nothing like I'd expected, not aggressive or demanding. Instead, it was almost hesitant, questioning, like he was asking permission even as he took it. His lips were warm, tasting of champagne and something darker. His hand cradled my face like I was something precious. I should have pushed him away, should have remembered who he was, what he'd just done to Marco. Instead, I kissed him back. My hands found his chest, feeling his heartbeat fast, erratic, human. His arm wrapped around my waist, pulling me closer until we were pressed together, the wind whipping around us, the yacht rocking gently beneath our feet. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathing hard. Lily, he started, but I pressed my fingers to his lips. Don't apologize, don't explain, just a sound from below, sharp, urgent shouting. Dante's expression changed instantly, the vulnerability vanishing behind cold calculation. Stay here. What's happening? Stay. Here. He disappeared down the stairs, moving with lethal grace. I heard more shouting. A crash, then silence that felt wrong. I should have listened, should have stayed on the observation deck like he'd ordered. Instead, I followed. On the main deck, chaos. Guests pressed against the windows, trying to see. Dante's men formed a tight circle near the bar. And in the center, sprawled on the marble floor, was one of the waiters. Blood pooled beneath his head, and clutched in his hand was a phone, the screen, displaying a text message I could read even from 10 feet away. Target acquired. Marcello is exposed. Move now. Dante's voice cut through the panic, deadly calm. We have a rat on board. His eyes found mine across the room. And they're not here for Marco. Time fractured into sharp, disconnected moments. Dante barking orders. His men moving with military precision, securing exits, checking guests. The dead waiter's phone being bagged like evidence. Blood still spreading across white marble, a grotesque work of art. And me, frozen near the staircase, watching it all unfold. Everyone stays calm, Dante announced, his voice carrying absolute authority despite the chaos. No one leaves this deck until we understand what happened. A woman in diamonds began crying. Her husband pulled her close, whispering reassurances that sounded hollow. Other guests clustered in small groups, their sophisticated veneer cracking under real fear. Dante. One of his men, the one who'd driven me that night, appeared at his elbow. The waiter's name is Joey Castellano. He's worked catering events for 6 months. Background check came back clean. Not clean enough. Dante's jaw was tight. Who hired him? The catering company. They've provided staff for us before. Find out who owns that company. Now. He turned, scanning the room, and his eyes locked on mine. Lily, come here. My legs moved automatically. When I reached him, his hand closed around my wrist. Not roughly, but firmly enough that I couldn't have pulled away if I tried. Did you see anyone approach him? He asked, voice low. Anyone talk to him? Hand him anything? I wasn't watching him specifically. I was upstairs with you. Before that, when you first arrived. Think. I tried to remember, but the evening was a blur of champagne and adrenaline. No, I don't think so. He was just serving drinks like all the others. Dante's expression darkened. He turned to his men. Check every staff member, phones, pockets, everything. And get the captain. I want to know who authorized bringing the yacht this far out. This far out. I looked through the windows and realized the shoreline had vanished. We were surrounded by black water and darker sky, miles from anywhere, trapped. Someone's coming for you, I whispered. That text said, I know what it said. His hand moved from my wrist to my waist, holding me close to his side. Protective, and they're going to be disappointed. Another of his men appeared, face grim. Boss. The captain. He's missing. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Dante went very still. Missing or dead? Can't find him. His quarters are empty, but there's blood on the floor. Murmurs of panic rippled through the guests. A glass shattered as someone's trembling hands lost their grip. Who's piloting the yacht? Dante's voice cut through the rising hysteria. Autopilot, looks like. We're headed northeast, away from shipping lanes, away from witnesses, away from help. I felt Dante's body tense beside me, every muscle coiling. How many staff total? 8. 6 catering, 2 crew. We've secured 5. Besides the dead one and the missing captain, there's still 1 unaccounted for. Find them. It wasn't loud, but something in his tone made everyone in the room go silent. Lock down the engine room. No one goes below deck except my people. And someone get me a working radio. The lights went out. Complete darkness, so sudden and absolute that several people screamed. I felt Dante's arm tighten around me, pulling me against his chest. Nobody move, he commanded. Stay where you are. Emergency lighting flickered on dim red bulbs that cast everything in hellish shadows. The yacht's engines sputtered, then died, leaving us floating in silence broken only by waves against the hull and panicked breathing. They've cut the power, Dante said quietly, speaking into the darkness. Which means they're already on board. My heart hammered so hard I thought it might crack my ribs. What do they want? Me dead. My organization in chaos. His hand moved to my face, tilting it up. In the red light, his features looked carved from stone. You need to listen very carefully. There's a safe room on the lower deck, port side, behind the wine cellar. The code is 1896. When shooting starts, he corrected. You run there. You lock yourself in. You don't come out until I come for you. Understand? I'm not leaving you. You will. His voice was iron. Because if something happens to me, you're the only person here who isn't part of this world. You're the only innocent. And I'll be damned if I let you die because you wandered into something you didn't understand. Footsteps on the deck above. Heavy. Multiple sets. Dante's men drew weapons, sleek black handguns that looked wrong in the elegant space. The guests pressed back against the walls, some crying, others silent with shock. Dante Marcello. The voice came from everywhere and nowhere, amplified through the yacht's speaker system. Male, young, confident. Come out. Let's talk like civilized men. Dante's expression didn't change. Luca Valentino, he said, though the man couldn't hear him. That arrogant little shit. Who? Rival family. His father and I had an understanding. Apparently the son has other ideas. The voice continued through the speakers. I have 10 men on this yacht. You have what, 4? Maybe 5? The math isn't in your favor. Send out your guests unharmed, and we can settle this between ourselves. He's lying, Dante said flatly. The moment anyone steps out, they're leverage. Or casualties. Another crash from somewhere above. Glass breaking. Then horrifyingly a scream cut short. One of the diamond-wearing women began sobbing in earnest. Her husband looked at Dante with desperate eyes. Please, we have children at home. Everyone stay calm. Dante ordered. But I could hear the calculation in his voice. He was outnumbered and he knew it. His hand found mine in the darkness, squeezing once. The safe room, Lily. When I give the signal, the door to the deck exploded inward. Men poured in black tactical gear, automatic weapons, faces covered by masks. Professional, military grade, not 10 men, at least 15. Dante shoved me behind him as his men opened fire. The world became noise and muzzle flashes and screaming. I hit the floor, hands over my ears, while chaos erupted around me. Bodies fell, blood sprayed. The elegant yacht transformed into a war zone in seconds. Through it all, I heard Dante's voice, eerily calm. Get to the safe room, now. But when I looked up, 3 masked men had their weapons trained on him, and standing behind them, removing his mask with a smile, was a man who couldn't have been older than 25. Hello, Dante, Luca Valentino said. I believe we have unfinished business. Then his eyes found me, crouched on the floor in my black dress. And who's this? Don't, Dante said, the single word carrying more threat than a dozen sentences. She's nobody, a guest. She doesn't know anything. Luca's smile widened. He was handsome in that polished way money buys perfect teeth, styled hair, designer tactical gear that probably cost more than my rent. But his eyes were dead, shark eyes. Nobody? He crouched down, studying me like I was an interesting specimen. Then why is Dante Marcello using his body as a shield? Why does he look at you like you're something precious? I couldn't speak, couldn't move. My dress was torn at the hem, blood not mine splattered across the silk. Around us, the other guests huddled against the walls while Luca's men kept weapons trained on Dante's small crew. 2 of Dante's men were down. Not dead, I thought. Please, not dead. Get up, Luca said to me, extending a hand. Let's see what makes you special. Don't touch her. Dante's voice was liquid nitrogen. Luca laughed. Or what? You're in no position to make demands. He grabbed my arm, hauling me to my feet. Everything happened at once. Dante moved faster than I'd thought possible. His elbow caught the nearest gunman in the throat. A weapon went off, deafening in the enclosed space. Someone screamed. Then Dante's hand was around Luca's wrist, twisting until I heard bones grind. Luca released me with a yelp of pain. But 3 guns pressed against Dante's head before he could follow through. Enough! Luca cradled his wrist, fury replacing his amusement. Enough of your legendary Marcello pride. You're done. Your empire is crumbling. Marco was just the beginning. We've been bleeding you dry for 2 years. Dante's expression didn't change, but I saw his jaw tighten. Marco worked for you. Marco worked for the highest bidder. Which, lately, hasn't been you. Luca gestured to his men. Take him to the front deck. Let him see what's coming. No, I started. But one of the masked men grabbed me, his grip bruising on my upper arm. They dragged Dante forward. He didn't resist, didn't fight, just walked with that same controlled grace, like he was choosing to go, rather than being forced. His eyes found mine once, a look that said, trust me, and I'm sorry, and survive all at once. Then they were gone, and I was left with Luca and 2 armed men and a room full of terrified people. Here's what's going to happen, Luca announced to the room. You're all going to stay very quiet, very still. And when this is over, you'll go home and tell everyone that the Valentino family is done playing second fiddle to the Marcellos. He turned to me. Except you. You're coming with me. Why? My voice came out steadier than I felt. I told you I'm nobody, because watching you die might finally break that stone-cold bastard. He grabbed my arm again, gentler this time but no less firm. And I want to see what Dante Marcello looks like when something actually matters to him. He pulled me toward the deck. The night air hit like a slap. The yacht rocked gently on black water. Stars scattered overhead like broken glass. Dante stood at the railing, surrounded by armed men. His shirt was torn, blood at his temple from where someone had hit him, but he stood straight, unbroken. Dante, Luca called out. Look what I found. Dante's eyes met mine, and for the first time since I'd met him, I saw real fear. Not for himself, for me. Let her go, Luca. She's not part of this. Everything's part of this now. Luca pressed a gun to the back of my head, cold metal against my skull. You took my father's territory. You humiliated my family. You've acted like you're untouchable for too long. Your father and I had an agreement. My father was weak. I'm not. Luca's voice hardened. On your knees, Dante, or I paint this deck with her brain. The silence that followed was absolute. Then, slowly, Dante Marcello, the man who'd broken Marco's arm without flinching, who ruled Boston's underworld through fear and respect, dropped to his knees on the wooden deck. For me. Good, Luca breathed. Very good. Now tell me where you keep your offshore accounts. The access codes. Everything. Go to hell. The gun pressed harder against my skull. I whimpered before I could stop myself. The codes, Dante. I watched Dante's hands curl into fists. Watched something in him struggle pride against protection, power against the one person who'd somehow slipped past his defenses in less than a week. Cayman National Bank, he said, voice hollow. Account 77362. Access code is my mother's birthday. June 15th, 1958. See? That wasn't so hard. Luca started reciting codes into a phone, one of his men recording everything. Now the others. I stopped listening, because in the reflection of the window behind Dante, I saw movement. Shadows detaching from shadows. 3 figures moving with impossible silence across the upper deck. Dante saw them too. His eyes flickered up, then back to Luca, and the smallest smile touched his lips. You made a mistake, Dante said quietly. What? You assumed I'd come out here without a contingency plan. He looked at me then, and his expression was almost apologetic. Lily, close your eyes. I did. Gunfire erupted. The world became chaos again, shouting, running, the gun leaving my head as Luca spun around. I dropped to the deck, hands over my ears. When I opened my eyes, Dante was standing over me, offered hand extended, blood on his knuckles and something feral in his eyes. Time to go, he said. He pulled me to my feet. Around us, Luca's men were engaged with new arrivals. Dante's reinforcements, I realized. More of his people who'd apparently been waiting for exactly this. But Luca himself had disappeared. Where? I started. Then I heard the helicopter. We both looked up as the black aircraft rose from the yacht's helipad a day. Pad I hadn't even known existed. Through the window, I could see Luca's face, furious but defeated. For now. He's getting away, I said. Let him. Dante's arm came around my waist. He gave me what I needed. What? Confirmation. His voice was cold. Marco wasn't working alone. This was bigger, organized. And now I know exactly who needs to die. He looked down at me, and the violence in his expression should have terrified me. Instead, standing there in my ruined dress with blood on my hands and my heart racing, I realized something that changed everything. I trusted him. Completely. Even though I shouldn't. Even though it was insane. Take me home, I whispered. Dante's expression softened. Lily, not to my apartment, to yours. I don't want to be alone tonight. Something shifted in his eyes. Understanding. Acceptance. The acknowledgement that we'd crossed a line neither of us could uncross. Okay, he said simply. Then he kissed me, there on the blood-stained deck with sirens wailing in the distance and his world burning down around us. And I kissed him back like it was the only truth I had left. Dante's penthouse sat atop a building in the financial district, all glass and steel and views that made Boston look like a circuit board of lights. We arrived near midnight, escorted by 2 of his men who swept the apartment before leaving us alone. The silence after they left felt enormous. I stood in his living room, still wearing the ruined dress, dried blood under my fingernails, my whole body trembling with delayed shock. Dante disappeared down a hallway, returning moments later with a first aid kit and a glass of whiskey. Drink, he said, pressing the glass into my hand. I did. The liquid burned, but it grounded me. Made me feel real again. He guided me to the couch, then knelt in front of me, opening the kit. Let me see your hands. They're fine, Lily. His voice was gentle but firm. Let me see. I extended my hands. They were scraped raw, from hitting the deck. Small cuts across my palms where I'd caught myself. Nothing serious. But Dante cleaned each one with careful precision, his touch impossibly tender for someone who'd just orchestrated a counterattack that left 3 men bleeding. I'm sorry, he said quietly, not meeting my eyes. You should never have been there. Never have seen that. You saved my life. I endangered it first. He pressed gauze to a deeper cut on my palm. Everything I touch turns to violence eventually. It's who I am. What I am. I used my free hand to tilt his chin up, forcing him to look at me. Then what does that make me? I asked to come here, to your home, knowing exactly what you are. His dark eyes searched mine, looking for something revulsion, maybe, or fear. Why? Because I'm tired of being safe, I admitted. The whiskey or the adrenaline crash had loosened my tongue. My whole life. I've played it safe. Good grades. Respectable career. Following all the rules. And where has it gotten me? Alone in a studio apartment, drowning in debt, studying other people's trauma instead of living my own life. That's not... You make me feel alive, I interrupted. Even when you terrify me. Especially then. Like I'm finally participating in my own story instead of just observing everyone else's. Dante's hand stilled on mine. That's the adrenaline talking. Tomorrow in daylight, you'll remember what happened on that yacht and you'll run. Will I? You should. But will I? I leaned forward until our faces were inches apart. Tell me honestly, Dante, do you want me to run? The silence stretched between us, charged with everything unspoken. No, he finally said, his voice rough. God help me. No. Then his mouth was on mine, and this kiss was nothing like the others. This was desperation and relief and want that had been building since that first night in the corridor. His hands cupped my face, tilted my head back, and I opened for him, tasting whiskey and copper, and something darker. I pulled him closer, needing to feel his heartbeat, to confirm he was real and alive and here. My fingers tangled in his hair, scraped down his neck. He made a sound low in his throat, half growl, half surrender. Lily, he breathed against my mouth. If we do this, there's no going back. You'll be mine. In my world, that means something. It makes you a target. I'm already a target. Luca saw me. Knows about me. I'll handle Luca. I don't want you to handle anything. I pulled back enough to meet his eyes. I want you to stop trying to protect me from yourself. I'm choosing this. Choosing you. With full knowledge of what that means. His control cracked. He lifted me easily, carrying me down the hallway to a bedroom that was all dark wood and white sheets and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. He set me down gently, then stepped back. Last chance, he said. I can call you a car. Have someone take you home. We forget this happened. Instead of answering, I reached behind my back and found the zipper of my dress. Pulled it down slowly. The silk pooled at my feet, leaving me in just my underwear and the remains of my composure. Dante's expression transformed hunger, replacing hesitation. He crossed the distance between us in 2 strides, his mouth finding mine again while his hands mapped my body like he was memorizing terrain. I pulled at his shirt, buttons scattering, needing to feel his skin. When we finally fell into the bed, it felt less like surrender and more like claiming both of us, taking what we'd been circling around for days. The city lights painted patterns across his skin. I traced the scars I found there, a knife wound along his ribs, a bullet graze on his shoulder, the accumulated evidence of his violent life. He let me explore, patient despite the tension in his body. This one? I whispered, touching the scar near his heart. My uncle, the night I decided to take back what was mine. And this? A business disagreement that got personal. Each scar was a story written in pain, but beneath them, I felt his heart beating steady, strong, alive. You're not a monster, I said. I am. His hand covered mine, pressing it against his chest. But maybe with you. I can remember what it felt like to be human. We came together slowly, carefully, like we both understood how fragile this was, how easily it could shatter. His touch was reverent despite the violence in his history. My name on his lips sounded like a prayer. Afterward, we lay tangled in white sheets while the city breathed below us. His fingers traced lazy patterns on my spine. I rested my head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat slow to normal. My mother used to say, he murmured into the darkness, that everyone gets one chance at something real. One person who sees past the armor to the truth underneath. Do you believe that? I didn't. His arms tightened around me. Until Tuesday night, when a waitress with more courage than sense told me the truth about my girlfriend. I smiled against his skin. Best, worst decision I ever made. Lily. His voice changed, became serious. What happened tonight, Luca coming after me, it's just the beginning. There's going to be war. Real war. Blood in the streets. I can't promise to keep you safe from all of it. I know. But I can promise I'll die before I let anyone hurt you. I lifted my head to look at him. Don't promise to die for me. Promise to live. Promise to fight. Promise to build something better than the violence you inherited. Something in his expression shifted hope, mixing with disbelief. You think I can? I think you already are. He pulled me closer, burying his face in my hair. We stayed like that as night deepened. Two people who shouldn't fit but somehow did. I was drifting toward sleep when my phone buzzed on the nightstand. Unknown number. A single text message. Cute couple. Would be a shame if something happened to. The psychology student. Her mother lives in Sacramento, right? And her little brother just started at Berkeley? Beneath it, a photo of my family home. My blood turned to ice. Dante felt me tense, took the phone, read the message. His expression went absolutely cold. Luca, he said quietly. Then he was out of bed, pulling on clothes, making calls. The tender man from moments ago vanished, replaced by the ruthless strategist. And I realized with dawning horror. By choosing him, I hadn't just made myself a target. I'd painted one on everyone I loved. I need to call them, warn them. I was already reaching for my phone, but Dante caught my wrist. No. His voice was absolute. The moment you call, Luca knows the message reached you. Knows you're rattled. That gives him power. They're my family. And they're already protected. He showed me his own phone. Messages flying across the screen faster than I could read. I have people in Sacramento. 2 of my best. They'll be at your mother's house, within the hour. Your brother's apartment at Berkeley is being watched as we speak. I stared at him. You. How did you even know where they live? His expression was almost apologetic. I know everything about you, Lily. Where you grew up, where you went to school, your undergraduate thesis on attachment disorders. Your mother's name is Jennifer. She's a high school art teacher. Your brother Daniel is pre-med, full scholarship. Your father died when you were 12, heart attack during a Little League game. The invasion should have angered me. Instead, I felt something else, the weight of being truly seen by someone who operated in shadows. You investigated me. The moment you told me about Isabella. He set down his phone, both hands framing my face. I don't let unknowns into my life, Lily. And you were the biggest unknown I'd encountered in years. A woman with no agenda, no angle, no reason to help me except basic human decency. So you had me researched, like a security threat. I had you researched like someone I was already falling for and couldn't afford to lose. The admission hung between us, raw and honest. This is insane, I whispered. We've known each other less than a week. Time doesn't matter in my world. Trust does. And I trust you more than people I've known for decades. His thumb traced my cheekbone. But I need you to trust me now. Trust that I can handle Luca. Trust that your family will be safe. How? He has resources, men. He clearly has no problem killing. And I have more. The dangerous edge returned to his voice. Luca's father respected the old ways. Territory, agreements, honor among thieves. But Luca's reckless, ambitious. He's made enemies in families that used to be neutral. And I'm going to use that. He pulled me toward the living room where his laptop sat open on the marble counter. With quick keystrokes, he brought up files, communications, financial records, surveillance photos. For 2 years, while Marco was stealing from me, I was tracking the money, following the trail. He pointed to a series of transactions. It all leads here, to the Valentino family, but also to 3 other families who've been taking cuts. Luca's been building a coalition against me, so you're outnumbered. I was, until tonight. A grim smile touched his lips. By attacking me openly, in front of witnesses, Luca broke the most sacred rule. He brought violence to neutral ground, threatened innocence. The other families, especially the old guard, they'll see that as unforgivable. He made a call, speaking rapid Italian, then another, and another. I watched his network activate, pieces moving on a chessboard I could barely comprehend. When he finally set down the phone, dawn was breaking over Boston's skyline, painting the clouds in shades of blood and gold. It's done, he said. By noon, Luca Valentino will be isolated. His allies will pull back. His own family will call for a sit-down to discuss his leadership deficiencies. You're going to kill him. Eventually, he said it without emotion. But first I'm going to dismantle everything he built. Take back what he stole. Make him watch while his empire crumbles. Then and only then he'll die. Quickly. More mercy than he deserves. I should have been horrified. Should have run screaming from this man who discussed murder like a business transaction. Instead, I felt a fierce satisfaction that frightened me. What does this make me? I asked quietly. I'm standing here, listening to you plan someone's death. And I'm okay with it. Because he threatened my family. Because he put a gun to my head. What does that make me? Dante crossed to me, pulling me against his chest. Human, he said simply. Wanting to protect the people you love doesn't make you a monster. It makes you like everyone else. But most people don't. Most people never face real danger. Never have to choose between their morals and their survival. His hand stroked my hair. You're not becoming like me, Lily. You're just discovering you're stronger than you thought. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother. Sweetie, there are 2 very polite men in a car outside our house. Do you know anything about this? Relief flooded through me. They're there. I told you. Dante kissed the top of my head. I protect what's mine. We stood there as morning light filled the penthouse. 2 people who shouldn't work but somehow did. The violence of the previous night felt distant now, like something that had happened to different people. What happens next? I asked. Next, you go back to your life. Your classes, your studying, your normal world. While you go to war, while I handle business. He pulled back to look at me. But every night, if you want, you come here. To me. You tell me about psychology theories and difficult professors. You remind me there's more to life than territory and revenge. And when it's over? When Luca's dead and the war is won? His expression softened. Then maybe we figure out what comes after. If there can be an after for someone like me. There can be, I said with certainty I didn't know I possessed. There has to be. He kissed me then, gentle despite everything, full of promise despite the darkness ahead. When I finally left his penthouse hours later, wearing borrowed clothes and carrying my ruined dress in a bag, I felt changed. Not corrupted, as I'd feared, but awakened. Like I'd been sleepwalking through my life and had finally, violently, woken up. My phone buzzed with a new message. Dante, the car will pick you up at 8 tonight. Wear something comfortable. We're staying in. I smiled, typing back. What are we doing? His response came immediately. You're teaching me to be human again. I'm teaching you that you're allowed to want dangerous things. Fair trade? Fair trade, I confirmed. As the elevator descended toward the lobby, toward my old life that would never quite fit the same way again, I caught my reflection in the mirrored walls. I looked different. Stood different. Like someone who'd walked through fire and discovered she was made of something that didn't burn. 3 months later, Luca Valentino's body was found in a warehouse in Southie. Heart attack, the official report said. No signs of foul play. 6 months later, I defended my thesis on moral flexibility in extreme circumstances. My professor called it disturbingly insightful. 1 year later, Dante Marcello proposed with a ring that didn't come from a velvet box he'd once meant for someone else, but from a quiet afternoon when he'd asked what I wanted, and I'd said, something that's only ours. And in a world built on violence and lies, we carved out something that felt almost like truth, almost like love, almost like redemption. But redemption, I'd learned, wasn't about erasing the darkness. It was about finding someone willing to stand in it with you, and refusing to let go.